Let's now take a closer look at the main component of the SLD25 model. We'll start with the learning events. We use the term learning events because they represent recognizable units as they occur in time and space, characterized by a specific function in the learning process, always, let's be careful, from the student's point of view. Let's imagine we have no prior knowledge of a topic, but we are asked to become reasonably expert on a subject in order to engage in a sensitive discussion or complete a task. How do we usually proceed? First of all, many of us start by gathering the necessary content. We might attend a lecture or a seminar, look for books, articles, select videos online, and maybe even online courses like MOOCs. The process of gathering, acquisition, and collection of content could take place individually or with the support of teachers, as in a class, or interactively with other people, for example, during a seminar or a workshop, or through digital and interactive content, such as exploring a virtual reality environment. In this way, we've already identified two initial learning events, which we'll call content collection, a process which can be characterized by low or high interactivity, depending on whether this event takes place in an interactive dynamic or not with other individuals. But be careful, we're talking about collection and not acquisition or learning of content, because at this stage, the elements gathered are not yet able to become actual knowledge or skills. That is, they are not truly ours on a deep level. They are ours only on a superficial level, meaning they will truly become part of us only in the later stages. Once the content has been gathered, usually, to facilitate its transformation into real learning, we need to manipulate it, to organize it into diagrams, to synthesize it, so that it can then be integrated with our previous knowledge, and then we need to apply it in multiple contexts, to explore it in depth, to understand its validity, and also its generalizability. New stages therefore emerge that support the learning process, what we will call the content elaboration, which is what we do when we reorganize our notes. We create summaries, diagrams, but also simply when we highlight a book, it involves manipulating content. Then we have the practical experience of what has been learned, or also its further exploration through production and research activities, or the exercise of critical thinking on the topic through discussions, which can be guided by teachers or take place among peers. Finally, to achieve a deeper understanding and long-term retention, as they say long-term, we need to engage in actions of repeated recall and reactivation of the knowledge we want to acquire in a lasting way, what is known as the practice of retrieval, of recall. At this point, we have all the elements to stimulate the process of reflection and metacognition on the learning path taken by answering questions such as, what results have I achieved? How can I improve my learning process in any way? We have therefore encountered 8 learning events, each of which is represented in our method by a specific card. Low interactivity content collection, high interactivity content collection, content elaboration, application, practical experience, production or research, discussion, retrieval, reflection, and metacognition. Each learning event can also be carried out through different methods. It is naturally the teacher's task to select them in the most appropriate way based on the characteristics of the students, the subject, or the context. To facilitate the design of learning events, various possible activities are listed on the back of each card. For example, the low interactivity content collection can be carried out through listening to a lecture, reading articles and books, watching videos or MOOCs, listening to a podcast, or watching experiments. Each specific learning event, moreover, can be placed within the student's experience as an individual or collaborative moment, evaluated or not evaluated. The learning events we have described so far can ultimately be carried out with different weights and sequences based on the chosen pedagogical approach. For example, if we were to follow Kolb's cycle, the starting point could be a practical activity that allows immersion in an experience, followed by careful and thoughtful reflection on what was observed with consideration, and the exploration of the theoretical dimension, and then its generalization. Next, we would need to assign a duration to each of these activities and determine whether they will be carried out individually or collaboratively, and whether they will be assessed or not. But above all, we will need to decide where they are placed in terms of space-time, whether they take place in the classroom, online, in a synchronous online setting, in an asynchronous format, or in the student's self-directed mode. Continuing with the previous example using Kolb's cycle, let's try to hypothesize a small application of the SLD method. If the expected learning outcome for one ECTS credit were, for example, the student will be able to recognize and describe the specific characteristics of Romanesque and Gothic architecture, we could start with a practical experience, clearly define it as collaborative and non-assessed activity, and place it in the autonomous zone, asking the students to organize themselves into groups to visit a number of Romanesque and Gothic buildings in the area, taking photos and making observations at a time of their choosing, but before a set deadline. Then we could propose a moment of reflection and discussion in the classroom, collaborative and non-assessed, which would also allow students to learn about the work of other groups and to become familiar with the teacher, and in this way to share the observations that have been made. Then we could include a high interactivity content collection to be completed collaboratively, online and asynchronously. How could this be done? For instance, by asking students to engage with a set of videos that have been thoughtfully selected and enhanced with structured activities and reflective prompts designed by the teacher, possibly with support from a collaborative annotation tool like a Noto or Feedback Fruits. And then we could conclude in class or in a synchronous virtual classroom, depending on the specific context, with a high interactivity content collection event, such as a teacher-led lesson that introduces other historically distinct examples, inviting students through questions and short activities, perhaps supported by a student response system, to make comparisons, recognize differences, and hypothesize their causes. To these activities, in order to ensure the actual achievement of the expected learning outcomes, we would probably need to add a certain number of hours of low interactivity content collection to explore additional aspects, to delve deeper into them, in fact, by using a book or an additional part of a MOOC selected by the instructors to be completed independently without specific activities. Content elaboration carried out in small groups, collaboratively and effectively, possibly online through the creation of maps on Miro or collaborative summaries, which are indeed evaluated. And finally, we will have a part dedicated to retrieval, which we will place both in the student's independent study, in this case possibly even without aids, and at the end of the first half of the course with an individual activity carried out in class, not graded, for example, a test with both multiple choice and open-ended questions, the results of which the teacher will discuss with the class in order to give everyone the opportunity to check together their own progress and overall development. You can clearly see that in this way, our ECTS project dedicated to Romanesque and Gothic architecture has been completed.